I've been hearing a lot of people talking about giant worms in the ground lately. And you know what? There may be something to it. You see, I live out in the country. It's very rural around here. And sometimes I like to go down into my cellar, which is actually called a root cellar, and check out all of our food storage that we have down there. We store everything from canned goods to dehydrated foods to freeze-dried foods. We even have some canned fruits and vegetables down there. Now, the place where I live was built in the 1800s. So the walls are quite thick and it has a dirt floor. Also, the door that you walk through to get into the root cellar is actually just a big hole dug out with a frickin' spoon in the side of the foundation. And it's covered with a wooden door. But usually we just leave that door off its hinges and tied back so that we can easily get into the root cellar. Now, one time I went down there and I noticed this weird divot in the ground right outside the entrance to the root cellar. I figured it was just some animal that had been digging around outside the house again. However, a couple weeks later I went back down there to grab some canned tomatoes and I noticed that the divot had gotten bigger and that the dirt that had been dislodged from that divot had created this long winding path away from the house. This path just disappeared into the cornfield behind our house. I thought it was odd, but again, I just figured that it was some critter that was digging around outside the house again. However, this past weekend, I went down there again to grab some more canned tomatoes, and I noticed that this divot was now a full-blown trench. I mean, it looked like somebody had taken a freaking bulldozer and dug a trench in the ground. I didn't think that any kind of animal that lived around here could make a trench like that. I mean, we do have gophers, but gophers don't dig that wide of a trench. So, I decided to follow this path to see where it led me. And as I walked along this path, I noticed that it led me right to the edge of our property line. It stopped right there. So, I got curious and I decided to cross over our property line and follow the path beyond that. The path was still fresh looking. It wasn't like anything had been done to it for at least a day or two, maybe even less. But as I continued to follow it, I came across an area where it made a sharp turn to the left and disappeared under the shed that we keep all of our farming equipment in. That's when I noticed the tracks. These were not gopher tracks. They were too big. They were also not mole tracks. Moles don't make that much of an impression in the ground either. These tracks looked like they had been made by something big, like elephant tracks, except they weren't nearly as big as elephant tracks. More like the size of a big dog's tracks. And then I saw the hole leading under the shed. I was scared to go any further, but I couldn't help myself. I mean, I gotta know what the heck is going on around here. So I shined my flashlight down into the hole and saw this tunnel. It was smooth, like it had been dug with some kind of machine. It was also slightly sloped downward, like if you poured water into this hole, it would flow in that direction. So I got on my hands and knees and crawled through the hole into the tunnel. It wasn't very far before I came upon another opening. I crawled through that and found myself in a big cavern. I shined my flashlight around and was amazed at what I was seeing. All around this cavern were these massive, I'm talking like grizzly bear-sized paws, only they were round like a circle instead of having claws. The coolest part was this huge worm or snake or eel-like creature that was slithering around in the middle of the room. It was white and slimy and very fat. I mean, this thing was probably over 6 feet long. Then it did something that completely freaked me out. It raised up on its tail end and started moving sideways towards me. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes locked on this creature until it turned around and slithered back in the opposite direction. I knew right then and there that I had just stumbled onto some kind of underground creature's lair. Whatever these things were, they were big and they were definitely living in the ground around my house. But why? Why would they live here? I mean, this isn't like a swamp or anything. It's just a dry field. And yet here is this underground creature and who knows how many more of them there are out there. That's when I heard a voice behind me say, "Looking for something." I spun around and saw a man standing in the tunnel entrance. He was tall and skinny with long, greasy hair and a scraggly beard. His eyes were sunken in, and he had a nose like a hawk. "Who are you?" I asked him, surprised that I wasn't more scared than I was. I mean, this guy looked like he should be living in the woods, not in a nice suburban neighborhood. "You can call me Jeremiah," he said with a raspy voice. "And I can tell you're not from around here." "Nope," I said. "Just moved in a couple months ago." "Oh, so you're the new neighbor," Jeremiah said. "Yeah, actually, I live next door," I said. "Oh, yeah," Jeremiah replied. "Right next door. I can show you something cool." He started walking back towards the tunnel. "What, cool?" I asked. "Yeah, come on," he said. "Let me show you." So I followed him back to the tunnel and we crawled through it together. On the other side, we came into another large cavern, except this one was filled with all kinds of strange devices and contraptions. There were wires and lights and tubes and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And in the center of the room was a huge glass sphere. It was filled with a clear liquid and inside of it was a humanoid-like figure, except it didn't look human. It had big black eyes and a mouth like a fish. As we watched, one of the black eyes suddenly opened and it stared directly at us. Then it closed again. "What is this place?" I asked. "This," Jeremiah said proudly, "is just a little bit of my workshop. I'm an inventor, you could say." "Okay," I said. "That explains the wires and stuff. But what about those creatures? What are they?" You mean the girders," Jeremiah said. "They're just some pets. Nothing really special." "Pets," I said. "Yeah," Jeremiah replied. "They're fun to mess around with, keep as pets. They're strong and they don't bite that much." "Okay," I said. Well, I better be getting home. Dinner's probably ready." "Oh, sure," Jeremiah said. "Of course." "Well, it was nice meeting you, neighbor." "Yeah," I said. "You too, Jeremiah. You too." So I turned around and headed back towards the tunnel. As I was crawling through it, I heard Jeremiah's voice behind me. "Say," he said, "if you ever need anything, just let me know, okay?" "Sure," I said. "No problem." And then I came back home. When I told my wife about it, she just laughed and said that I was making it all up. But I know what I saw and I know that there are creatures living in the ground around our house. I just hope they stay there and don't try to come out anytime soon.